Hello there. Thank you for tuning in to the Above the Net SWAC Volleyball News Show. You are listening to your host, Tamika Newman, volleyball analyst, two-time SWAC graduate with a bachelor's from Prairie View and a master's from Texas Southern, your 2006 SWAC Volleyball Player of the Year. To make a long story short, hashtag I am SWAC. This segment of Dr. Mike Prince's already popular show that discusses all things SWAC intends to highlight elite performances by volleyball teams and individuals, interview current and former players and coaches, and give youth coaches, parents, and players an inside look into a SWAC volleyball program. Let's jump right into the show. Today's guest is Gohan Yomez, head coach at Florida A&M University. He has an extensive coaching background here in the States and abroad. The Rattlers are also the consecutive SWAC champions for the last 2 years. Coach, we are grateful you made time in your busy schedule to join us today. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. Thank you. We're going to get right into it because we know your time is valuable. If you can start off by telling us just a little bit about yourself, and I know that is probably a long chat, and then how you got to FAMU.
Yeah, I'm originally from Europe. I was born and raised in Istanbul, and growing up I started playing volleyball in middle school. But then volleyball programs in my country were not impressed with my height. I'm only 5'8". So my coaches back then encouraged me to start coaching, and that's what I started doing with the younger age groups. Due to the school I went to a school that was educating in English. I started translating for some of the foreign players and for the agents, and I ended up meeting a couple of coaches in the United States. Came to Western New Mexico University back in 2002 as a grad student, and quickly realized that they didn't have the degree I needed to be a volleyball coach and continue in the United States. So moved to Cameron University in Oklahoma as a grad student, and ended up getting my master's degree in sports psychology from there. And after that, I was hired another Division II institution in Michigan, Northwood University. Then moved to University of Arkansas in 2007, and our entire coaching staff in 2008 came to Florida State. And that's how I started becoming familiar with Florida A&M, being in the same town and competing against each other. And when the job opened here in 2018, I applied and ended up being the head volleyball coach here.
Wow, awesome. I love that. I want to go back to a few things. You got your master's, I believe, in sports psychology?
Yes, correct.
Why were you interested in sports psychology?
Growing up in a country that volleyball is one of the major sports, playing it as well, that you see what kind of impact it can make, positive or negative, not only with yourself or with your teammates, since volleyball is one of the ultimate team sports. I thought that would be something really useful to learn and investigate as a coach and be able to help the student athletes when I'm doing that. And when that presented itself as a grad student, be able to get a master's in sports psychology, I thought it was a perfect opportunity.
Definitely a perfect opportunity, and I know you get a chance to use some of the things that you learned. In hindsight, having coached for 15 years and doing some work on the mental skills side now, on the consulting side of my business, I wish I would have. I have a real interest in sports psychology, and after getting into coaching about 5 years, I realized what I knew volleyball-wise was not going to help them more than what I could provide for them in terms of their mental game. And so it's been a huge focus for me probably the last 10 years, and certainly everybody around the country in the coaching world.
Yeah, it's definitely an important component, and it's definitely something that can help not only individuals but the teams as well. It gives me a different perspective of understanding what the players might be going through, But we also do sports psychology with our team, not with me, with doctorate students from Florida State, and we've seen really great results with that as well.
Awesome. I love that. I love that. So let's go. Our goal is that players are listening on the show, coaches are listening, parents are listening, obviously former and current SWAC players as well. So on the player side, if you can remember, Coach, what was the biggest adjustment from high school or prep ball to college ball or club, maybe in your country?
Well, I think the biggest adjustment is the speed when you move from one to the other, and how the mistakes become fewer and in between once the level continues to go up. So some of the things you get away when you're younger or when you play a lower level is not there anymore. And every time you skip a level, it can be from middle school to JV, from JV to high school to college, you end up becoming the younger player in those age groups. So you come in as, a ninth grader, you're a freshman in high school. By the time you're a senior, you're the oldest player, but now you come to college, you're the youngest one again. So it turns into a situation where you have to prove yourself over and over again. And the learning and being able to deal with mistakes are part of the game, but they need to have fewer of those once the level continues to move up.
That's a really great point. I had Coach Alexis Austin on from Texas Southern, and she talked about that your process kind of starts over when you go up to the next level. I remember freshman year being an adjustment in college because I worked hard all summer. I did everything I needed to do, but it never dawned on me to prepare myself mentally to start over at the beginning because you're at a new level, especially in terms of mindset, that set a new goal and now you got to be process driven and work towards this new goal. So yeah, that's one of the biggest adjustments I found, and I have found with I've worked at the high school level and the college level. That's really good. Talk about, you were an athlete, so what's a lesson? We always tell our athletes, we're teaching you life, and my motto is, sports don't teach life lessons. A coach teaches you life lessons through sports. But as an athlete, what's something you learned then that still helps you today?
I think the major lesson I learned is that the work never ends. You have to do the work every day to have a result at the end. Sometimes you feel like what you do today does not give you a result the next day, and it might be true, but it is building the blocks to have the result at the end of the season or at the end of your career. So what we try to do with my teams is this incremental goals that we have every day that we're trying to achieve that leads into the conference championship date and then goes into the NCAA tournament if we're successful in that tournament. So I think that's a lesson for everybody in any business as well, not only in sports, where if you feel you have to win something at the end of the road, you have to leave that payment that you got to do the work every day.
Every day. The rent's due every day. Success does have a cost. I love that. We'll flip now to the coaching side. And you spoke about this a little bit earlier, and I was going to ask you, what knowledge did you have of the SWAC before FAMU joined?
Yeah, we are, with the footprint, we are very close to the conference here. So we played Alabama State home and away when I got the job here at FAMU. So we were very familiar with their level. Obviously, that's one of the marquee programs in the conference. We even went and played a crossover, MEAC and SWAC crossover. I think that was back in 2018. So we played Texas Southern. I think we played Jackson State, Alabama A&M, and Alabama State in that tournament. So we knew the level, a lot of athletic kids, and a lot of competitive rivalries within the conference. We were not very familiar in terms of how the travel works, but in those 2-3 years that I was the head coach here, we were in MEAC, that we were able to play some of those opponents and see the level of play.
Yeah, I remember those crossover matches, and I didn't know at the time you guys would join, but I'm sure those came in handy when the conference made a decision to welcome Florida A&M into the conference. Absolutely. So, Coach, I've read your resume. Very impressive. You've been a winner all your life, it seems. You surely have a formula. Maybe that's not the right word, but some keys to winning. Been successful? Have you just coached some really talented kids? What is it? What's your formula for winning?
I mean, honestly, I wish I knew if there was a formula. It changes every year. So I've been lucky to have good players on my team. So I think we've done very well with recruiting and all the stops that I've had in the U.S. And I worked with a lot of good coaches when I was an assistant, with a lot of good head coaches and other assistants. And now being a head coach with good assistant coaches, I think the staff makes a big difference. And being able to create the buy-in from the players. And my goal is always finding the kids and families that will be happy in that specific institution that I'm coaching. And once you have that, you create that ownership that they feel like they're part of the university and this is their home away from home. Now we can help them to get better in volleyball and fight for something at the end, and that's what we've been able to do. And from the volleyball standpoint, as you know, it starts as a serving and passing game, so we put a lot of emphasis on those, and then we were able to bring in some quality setters that helped our offensive game.
I love it. I got a lot there. To begin, before you even get to the volleyball part or coaching them, you brought up some things. Recruiting's important, the staff, making sure the school is a good fit. That's so underrated. And then you get that buy-in, and then you can start to get them better at volleyball. So I love that. I love that. That's Coach's winning formula. So write that down. Now, let's start with camp this year. What'd you learn about how did camp go? What'd you learn about this year's team in camp and in those early preseason games?
Well, we're still in a phase that this is my first year here, although if you exclude COVID, we've been here for 5 years with the same staff. This is the first year we had a significant number of freshmen joining our program. When I accepted the position here, we were not left with a recruiting database, or the university didn't have any relationships with the clubs and high schools that would produce quality athletes for our program. So we relied on, our connections around the state and the southeast to get some kids, and also looked in some areas that FAMU has big alumni base. So talking about Atlanta's or Houston and Dallas and DC area and Chicago. So that helps us to bring some kids, but we also had to rely on transfers quite a bit. So we do have a turnover in the program. We're having to add 6, 7 players every year, and this was one of those. And we've done a good job with transfers coming in, and we've been extremely lucky that we haven't had any transfer outs. We were able to graduate every player we brought into our program. So with that, we had a significant number of players coming in. So that starts with, having everybody getting to know each other, spending time together, doing some team bonding events. We did a lot of stuff outside the gym with, for example, going to the animal shelter and doing different things. So that helped us quite a bit. Volleyball-wise, our main concern was trying to figure out who our setter would be, or if we would play 5-1 or 6-2. We lost both of our setters from last year. So that settled down a little bit recently. And also finding who plays well next to each other, and that's still a work in progress for us, that we're still trying to figure out the best lineup, who plays defense better next to the other, or how the offense looks depending on how we're lining up. But we're finding out that this is a group, again, that's going to play hard. They know the work they need to do to be in the championship level again. But sometimes it takes longer than other years. This is the year I think it's going to take us at least a couple of more weeks to get to a point where we're a little bit more stable with what we're doing.
Sounds very, very typical of most people's season. I know some people get a chance to gel early, have some early success, figure out a solid lineup. Sounds pretty standard that you guys started establishing that culture and those bonds with those team bonding activities. Um, all of those things we know are going to be successful later on in the season, but still finding out where people are going to play and who's comfortable next to each other is still a work in progress. So sure those things will come together in the coming weeks, especially since that team bonding and those relationships were built early on. You're about a month, maybe 5 weeks, my math could be off, into the season. At the end of every season, and you've spoken to this a little bit, almost everybody has holes to fill, and they use recruiting to fill those holes. How do you think you did with filling those holes with your recruiting?
We are in a much better place than we were a couple of years back. Like I mentioned just a minute ago, now we have a solid recruiting database. We have kids who have come from different programs and being successful here with our staff. So that creates those relationships with the high schools and also clubs as well. So we have a good 2024 class coming in. We're very confident with how well they're going to do. We're still going to look to add a couple of more transfers to that group once the transfer portal opens up for volleyball. I think that's late in November. And we also got a couple of commitments in 2025. This is the first time at FAMU for me that we are 2 years out getting the kids we really want. So these are the kids that have options to go other places, but choosing to come to us. But the stability and success here, not only on the volleyball court, but academically, and how well FAMU is doing in the national rankings is helping us with that too. But I'm very happy with the direction that the recruiting going for us.
Yeah, FAMU, everywhere you go, Rattler Nation. I'm a part of some SWAC groups, and FAMU kind of takes over those groups. You guys have a very loyal and proud fan base. I don't know if I mentioned I'm based here in Houston. I know you guys had a couple of players that I'm familiar with. I coached one of them and then coached in the same district as the other with Emerald Jacobs and is it Brooke Hudson, who I believe went to Colorado first?
Yes, Colorado State. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So your footprint is big here in Houston. It was a joy to watch those two, especially last year at the SWAC tournament, which was home for them here in Houston, and to see their families in the stands. You talked about the transfer portal, and people have different opinions about it. I believe it has helped the HBCUs because there's been some players that have gone other places and said, hey, I want to go back to my home state, and there's a Division I HBCU right there at home. Or I want to go just try another school. And so we've been the beneficiary, when I say we, SWAC schools, of that. So talk about the portal, how the portal has helped you guys be successful as well.
I mean, it can help you and it can hurt you too. So it can go either way. And I think that's where those kids being good fit for the schools and for the staff, but also the school being a good fit for the whole family is very important. So we need to be able to keep some of those better kids that come to us. And I think the schools, especially in our conference and in MEAC, are doing a very good job with it. For us, we always do our due diligence when we deal with transfers. We talk to as many people as possible. We're trying to understand why they're transferring. We don't want people to underestimate the level of volleyball that's in our conference, which is improving every year. And we have a lot of good coaches. I mean, some of the improvement from the teams are just amazing in a short period of time. So they need to be able to compete in our level, but also understand that they still need to work hard and they are here as volleyball being an important part of their daily life or their responsibilities. So from that sense, I think it has helped majority of the HBCUs per se, but we also wanted to come to a point where we are becoming the number one choice. And I think that's something that needs to come in the next 5 years, where I see it with my program and I see it with some of the other SWAC schools, where when they have options to go to other places, they need to be picking us, and that is already happening, and that's really, really great to see.
It's really great to see. I was at Prairie View the year that we played in the championship game with Alabama State. I want to say it was 2019. And obviously I was over recruiting. I was an assistant. And the quality in players that we saw, and I'm going to go ahead and add, even after kind of the George Floyd, the Black Lives Matter, there was a big push to go back to HBCU, especially for athletes of color. The video I saw when I first got the job and the video that came after we had some success, and then there was a big migration, and obviously the growth of the transfer portal was night and day. I mean, we were getting kids who are 6'2" lefty who can go to any of the mid-majors, and they're choosing us as their first choice. Was amazing. And you're right, there is a big shift, which is why I always tell people, especially for the top, I want to say third of the conference, because I break the conference down into maybe thirds in terms of the level of play, but that top third are getting players that are Division I talent pretty early on in high school, and their choice is to attend a SWAC school. And so I have been around to see that shift, and I'm very excited about it, and it's very apparent in the play, especially in the championship game last year, where the pace rivaled that of those conferences like the Southland and some of the conferences out the Big South, and just some of those mid-major conferences. The play was very similar, if not faster. I was super proud watching that, and that the world got to watch it on ESPN, where where the championship game is televised. So that was really awesome.
Yeah, it's something great that people are noticing, and I think it's going to be even more evident where now. We did a good job in the last couple of years winning some preseason games. Not this year so much. I mean, we could have won way more than we did. But Jackson State, Prairie View, Alabama State, Southern, them doing well out of conference will also show everyone, hey, it's not only competitive within your peers, it's also competitive like the conferences you just mentioned, or it can be the Sun Belt. So if there is a kid that's considering going to Troy, but Alabama State and FAMU are options too, then they would look at all three equally instead of just bolting and going to Troy. And that's happening more and more this year. If you look, we have more schools winning non-conference matches, which will help with that recruiting trend even more.
I could be wrong, but I would say there's probably a record number of non-conference Division I wins this year. I don't think I'm wrong about that. Having kind of been a SWAC historian and playing and then coaching it, it has to be a record number, especially Prairie View coming on and winning. Was it 3 or 4?
I believe they have 5 wins in
non-conference.
Non-conference, yes, and they're all Division I wins. And they are a very good team. Their coaching staff done a fantastic job there.
They are doing an amazing job. I'll get into some SWAC notes from the opening week coming out of the West. Speaking of Prairie View, they had a homestand against Pine Bluff and Grambling, beat both of them. Pine Bluff more convincingly, but Grambling got a chance to tune in, and Grambling refused to go away in a sweep. Third set came out, was very dominant, but Prairie View just proved to be too much for them. Kirsten Atkinson, the big middle, just dominated, took up so much space along the net. And then in the East, Alabama State's unbeaten. They beat you guys, and then Bethune-Cookman. You guys 1-1 conference start. just losing to Alabama State and then beating A&M. So, Coach, talk about who you guys have up next and what it's going to take to beat them.
We have Mississippi Valley Saturday, and then we have Jackson State on Sunday. We're happy that the matches are back-to-back because we have UNF coming to us on Tuesday as well in our last non-conference match. Mississippi Valley, traditionally one of the bottom teams, but again, big improvement with the level of play that they have. They hired a coach who played at Howard, has coaching experience from Texas, so I think she's going to continue to help them improve. And Jackson has several good young kids, and they're playing better and better every week. They're very physical, but like we say every time, our serve and pass has to be on point, and we got to be able to rally. Once we rally, we can use our speed to open up different shots and be able to hit different angles, and that's what we've been working on since the season started.
Well, awesome, Coach. I know you all will do well. Safe travels on the road, and we wish everybody stays healthy. Thank you so much again for taking the time out to chat with us today. I learned a ton about you as well as our listeners. You have any parting words?
Well, I appreciate you having me, and I'm very proud to be here. I'm very proud of how well the conference is doing. Hopefully, we'll do our part to add to the tradition that SWAC has in athletics.
Yes, sir. You have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.